There are more slaves than ever before, in many different industries. There are many types of slavery, and all are equally bad. These vary from bonded labor to child slaves to sex slaves, and in many cases a person could be under the practice of more than one. With more awareness, we could end slavery within our lifetimes.
Descent-based slavery is the slavery of a person or persons based on their race or who they were born to. Descent-based slavery can be recent or not. People may enslave others based on their race or religious views for a long time. On the other hand, when children born from women in slavery are put into slavery immediately, it is still considered to be descent-based slavery. To become a slave that would be classified as descent-based, usually there is a complex system of hierarchy, usually a caste system, and that family falls in the lowest category. Children born from the family become slaves, and then their children, and so on. Descent-based slavery is usually carried out during long periods of time and with the same families. As generations pass, the same people own the same slaves. The reason descent-based slavery is exceptionally brutal is the fact that slaves born into this practice don't know anything except for doing what they are told to do. They have no control over their lives and know nothing of an outside world. The master considers the family as a property and unfortunately treats them as so.
Forced marriage is another type of slavery. Forced marriage is defined as the marriage of two parties where one or both don't have the full consent or willingness to marry. Also, this forced consent usually has to do with threats or pressure. People who are forced into marriage are generally women, but could also be men and sadly children. A way someone can be forced into marriage is through a money promise to their parents, which results in the parents basically selling their kids to the other. Another way is through inheritance, where the spouse gives the other person in their family to their family or clan, and it is sometimes after they die. This is referred to as servile marriage. Also, the marriage of children without consent is considered forced marriage. Generally, the child is a girl and she is being married to an older male. The marriage of children is a violation of human rights, but yet it still happens today. 60 million girls have been forced into marriage before turning 18. The reason this is so common is that children can't really think for themselves and do what their parents tell them.
Human trafficking is a type of slavery that involves transporting people away from the communities or countries in which they live and forcing them to work against their will using violence, deception, or coercion. Human trafficking affects countries and families on every continent and is not even close to being eliminated as a major problem. The International Labor Organization estimates that at any one time there are some 2.5 million people who have been trafficked and are being subjected to sexual or labor exploitation. Human trafficking is mostly performed for manual labor, sexual purposes, and creating commercial goods for more developed countries, and affects women more than men. As human trafficking exists primarily in places where the government or the people take little to no interest or initiative in eliminating the trafficking, allowing the slavery industry to thrive in these areas.
Child slavery affects an estimated 5.5 million children around the world. Child slavery is brutal and unfair, and children are often tricked into working by being told they'll get lots of money and the work won't be too hard. Once the child is enslaved, they are kept working through mental or physical threat, dehumanized, and treated as objects. They may be beaten or abused if they aren't working as hard as they should be. They usually aren't fed often and may be chained or locked up.
Sex slavery is a huge problem too. Sex slaves are almost always forced into prostitution or abducted against their will. Most human trafficking of women involves sexual slavery. The numbers of female slaves are in the millions. You do the math. The problem has been reported in more than 190 countries. Sex slave trafficking is most common from Southeast Asia, China, Africa, Latin America, and Eastern Europe into even North America, Western Europe, Japan, Australia, and the Middle East.
There are many types of slavery, and all should be stopped. Luckily, many people are being enlightened about the horrible truths of modern-day slavery. There are many ways we can stop this, but it's not going to be easy. The different types of slavery affect millions all over the world and in many different ways. We can raise awareness and come together to stop this once and for all. One of the most prevalent forms of slavery is bonded labor. Bonded labor happens when someone is in debt. In order to pay their debt, they work for who they owe to as payment. Unfortunately, the payment is structured so that the person will never be free of their debt. More often than not, the person's debt is placed upon their family or children after they die. This is very common in India and China. Often, these workers work in factories, farms, or homes as slaves or workers. The working conditions are very poor and often result in serious injury or disease occurring among the bonded slaves.